Recently, actually just a couple of days ago, depending on when you're watching this, a brand new transit system opened in London. Of course, it opened behind schedule, over budget, and with its fair share of problems. But wow, what a feat of engineering. My name is Ian Currey and this is Thinking Out Loud. I'm outside again today enjoying some fresh air, even though it's a rather rainy day. Come on, let me tell you what I think. Last time I told you Hillary had gone to visit her sister in Ireland. I had intended to visit England at the same time, but sadly that didn't work out. There was a lot going on in England at that time too, trooping the colour, one of the big parades, as well as beating the retreat just a few days earlier. I'd have loved to have seen either of those events again. Then, just when you think you couldn't get any more excitement into 1 week, a brand new railway line opened. This isn't just any line either. It's called the Elizabeth line in recognition of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. Since it's so new, I haven't been there yet to take pictures. That will have to wait until next time I work a trip to London. The engineering that goes into these things is amazing. We'll get into that in a moment. But to put it into perspective, tunnelling has been going on for many years. This station opened in January 1863 and has been operating ever since. That's a long time. But beneath that station is another system that was built just a few years later in 1890. These tube tunnels are the basis of London's underground system that zigzag all over the place. To thread a new tunnel through all of that existing tunnelling is one of the things that made the Elizabeth line so difficult. It's one thing to dig a short tunnel under something or through something where you can more or less see one end from the other. But how do you do that when the distance is several miles and has to zigzag around things? Tunnelling goes back much further than you'd think. There's a famous tunnel in Jerusalem. It's been attributed to Hezekiah, and it was built several centuries before Christ. It's not so very long, at about 1/3 of a mile or so, but it isn't straight either, and it was dug from each end, with the teams of tunnellers eventually meeting in the middle. Now, how do they do that? I remember going several miles down into a coal mine in the Kent coalfield. We talked about that before. And I asked one of the mining engineers, how do you know where to go and which way to dig? Well, the tunnels seemed impressive and certainly weren't straight. They were very complex. The mining engineer said, oh, that's easy. We simply follow the coal. So in the case of a coal mine then, you kind of don't need to know where you are so much or where you're going. There are other issues, of course, but direction and location aren't on the top of the priority list. A train, on the other hand, is heading from one place to another, and so you do need to know both of those things. I remember when the Channel Tunnel was being built from Folkestone to Calais. 2 large crews starting out from opposite sides of the English Channel, and they went digging, and into the ground they went and out under the sea. A very long time later, at the side of the road sat a huge tunnelling machine, and with true English humour a sign on it appeared saying, "For sale, one careful owner." Of course the machines were only useful for that one specific project. But again, how did the operators know where to dig? How do you meet up under the sea, or for that matter, under central London, without missing each other and ending up digging 2 tunnels side by side or ending up in the wrong place altogether. Can you imagine? Yes, the good news is your new railway tunnel is finished. The bad news is we missed Paddington and managed to find Chelsea. Can you build your station there instead? Underground, and especially undersea, is very hard to know where you are. You can't use a compass. The iron in the rocks messes up the magnetic compass. And satellite navigation doesn't work either. You can't see the satellites. And I can tell you that from experience. I once drove a bus through one of the Mersey tunnels in Liverpool. I paid the toll, headed into the tunnel, and once I got to the other side, the annoying voice said, "Turn around where possible." I did, and found myself heading back through the same tunnel, paying the toll, and as I came out into the daylight, the navigation system again prompted me, make a U-turn. I could have gone back and forth all day paying the toll. Inside the tunnel is a branch off to the left that brings you out somewhere else. And it was that road that the system wanted me to take, but because I was under the Mersey, the satellites couldn't see the system and were unable to give me directions. So how do you know where you are underground? Well, several systems were used going back a long way. Sometimes digging shafts down from the surface at different points, and sometimes simply tapping on the rocks, and you would listen to see where you were. Other times they would shine a light in from one end and measure the distance from the center of the light beam. Now, all of these methods were capable of working over shorter distances, but once you start digging tunnels like the Channel Tunnel or the new rail tunnel in London, which goes either under the city or under the sea, the Channel Tunnel is 40 miles long. Fewer and fewer of these methods actually work well enough to find your fellow tunnelers coming the other way. Well, this little thing is part of the solution. A clever German engineer called Max Schuler took a gyro and made a device called a gyrotheodolite. And somehow, because of the rotation of the Earth, if you keep the gyro spinning, it will line up with the Earth's rotation, point along the meridian, and so give you the direction of true north. Oh, it's all very clever. Along with clever computers and all sorts of other trickery, the Elizabeth line was able to weave its way between all the other existing tunnels, foundations and structures buried beneath the streets of London. With such complicated technical engineering all required to allow tunnelers to meet in the middle, it makes me wonder how they ever did it for ancient tunnels before all this modern cleverness was invented. I tried to do a little research on the gyrotheodolite, but the best I could do was to start figuring out how a gyro worked and how the two devices would help each other. It all seems like I'd enjoy the maths involved, but since I've never seen one, I'm not sure how you would ever use such a thing. The story of Hezekiah and his tunnelers is a little hard to keep track of too. It's something of a side note, of course, with most writings. The important fact seems to be that there was a long siege and that the tunnels were dug to divert water, but the how part that I'm interested in isn't clear at all. I found mention of the siege and tunneling work, but the Bible that gives that story really isn't much help with how Hezekiah did it. He realized the enemies intended to attack Jerusalem, and so he consulted with his officials and military advisors, and they decided to stop the flow of springs outside the city. They organized a huge work crew to stop the flow of the springs, cutting off the brook that ran through the fields. For they said, why should the king of Assyria come here and find plenty of water? Then there's a description of how he encouraged his workers and told them to be strong and courageous. Don't be afraid or discouraged because of the king of Assyria or his mighty army. For there is a power far greater on our side. He may have a great army, but they are merely men. We have the Lord our God to help us to fight our battles for us. Hezekiah's words greatly encouraged the people. These engineering works are noted elsewhere in a summary of Hezekiah's reign. The rest of the events in Hezekiah's reign, including the extent of his power and how he built a pool and dug a tunnel to bring water into the city, are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Judah. But as always, instead of just reading about engineering works and how an ancient king managed to dig a complex tunnel, not only met in the middle, but also has a slope just right to allow water to run through it, I wondered what kind of person he was. Was he a good leader? How did he operate? Well, we've already seen he was someone who encouraged his workers. He spent time consulting with people who led his workers. But as is so often the case, before this story is documented, there is a sentence hiding at the end of the previous chapter. Hezekiah sought his God wholeheartedly. As a result, he was very successful. It seems being committed to doing the right thing, following the principles that God had laid out, because of that, somehow, Hezekiah was successful. Certainly his tunnel was successful and on time. It can still be visited today, and if its construction had been delayed all those years ago, Jerusalem would have run out of water during the siege. I wonder what future generations will think of the new Elizabeth Line tunnel. It certainly seems to have been much more complicated than I ever expected it to be. I look forward to seeing it next time I visit London. Until then, I'll just have to enjoy my own underground railway. And for that, though, I don't think I'll need a gyro theodolite. Goodbye.